Hello, this is Frodo from Stray Dog Footy. Today's episode was recorded last week, before the events of this weekend, and I felt I would be remiss if I didn't comment on the ANZAC services at the MCG and the Stand at Dawn observances that happened on Saturday, April 25th, 2020. For those who are new to Australian rules football and or Australian holidays, ANZAC stands for Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. Beginning in 1916, during World War I, ANZAC Day began as a national day of remembrance for the soldiers who fell at Gallipoli the year before. It has since evolved to include those who have fallen in all military action of these two countries. In some ways, it is not unlike Memorial Day, celebrated in the United States. When I was in Australia last year, I was privileged to visit both the Shrine of Remembrance in Melbourne and the ANZAC Memorial in Sydney. Both are beautiful, emotional, and respectful places of tribute, as well as powerful reminders of the high cost of war and of those who paid the ultimate price. Likewise, the annual ANZAC Day ceremonies at MCG are splendid displays of decorum and honor, and even with a full stadium, you can hear the crackling of the torches during the moments of silence. This year, of course, with the quarantine, there were no crowds, no torches, no cavalry parade. Just a single bugler standing in the center of the Melbourne cricket grounds, and the cameras panning across row upon row of empty seats. But in some ways, this was just as powerful as the splendor and gallantry that normally surrounds ANZAC observations. The empty seats of the MCG, like plastic tombstones, stark reminders of the thousands who never came home. However, the images of the individual Stand at Dawn observances held this weekend with millions of Australians and New Zealanders out in their driveways were equally as strong. Holding candles, playing bugles and trumpets, some wearing old uniforms and medals, most wearing poppies, the symbolic flower of remembrance. Though apart, they stood together, remembering, honoring, sharing, and comforting, lest we forget. Thank you, as always. And now, on with episode 3 of Stray Dog Footy.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Stray Dog Footy. I'm Frodo from Florida, and I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. I just want to thank everyone for all the kind comments on the first 2 outings. I'm having tons of fun doing this podcast, but I find it almost unbelievable that anyone else would enjoy my scribblings and subsequent chinwagging. Thank you so much for listening, linking, posting, and sharing. Before we get into the thick of it, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping and correct something from the previous episode. In episode 2, when I was discussing the early years of the Bulldogs' history, I said that the team had changed its name back to the FCC. What I meant to say, of course, is FFC, standing for Footscray Football Club. Also, I want you to know I do realize that I sometimes call Melbourne. I am aware of this, and I am working on it. These won't be my last mistakes, I assure you, as sometimes it seems my mouth has a mind of its own. Apologies in advance. Anyhow, on with the show. Today's subject matter will be most valuable for people who are new to Australian rules football, but hopefully even the more experienced fan can also glean some small nugget of knowledge from what I am about to expound upon. Today I'm going to talk about the premier professional competition of Australian rules football in the world, namely the Australian Football League, or AFL for short. The league initially began as the Victorian Football League, VFL, with its first season starting in 1897. Initially consisting of teams based only in the Australian state of Victoria, the league's name was changed to the Australian Football League for the 1990 season to reflect expansion to states outside of Victoria. I will discuss these early days and the origin of our great game in much greater detail in future episodes. But for now, I would like to focus on the AFL as it stands today, exclusive of the current COVID-19 quarantines, of course. The AFL currently consists of 18 teams from 5 Australian states, but games have been played in every state and territory of Australia, plus New Zealand. After an initial preseason, which has been known by various names of different sponsors throughout the years, the AFL schedule, or fixture as it is known down under, consists of a 23-week or round regular season spanning the Australian winter from March to September. Teams each play 22 matches with a bye week falling sometime near the middle of the season, usually June. This regular season, or the home and away season as it is called, awards 4 points per win to each club, and the team with the most points moves to the top of the ladder. The Aussie term for standings. Should a match result in a tie, which is a rare occurrence but it does happen, each team gets 2 ladder points. Should 2 or more clubs have the same amount of points on the ladder, which happens often, especially after round 1, when half have 4 and the other 9 have 0 points, then the tiebreaker is the team's percentage. Basically, a team's percentage is the total points they scored, all goals and behinds for the regular season, compared to how many total points they allowed to be scored against them. To calculate the percentage, the formula is total points for divided by total points against multiplied by 100. In case I lost you there, I'll give you an example. Let's say that after round 1, your team won by a total score of 75 to 50. Definitely not a shootout, but not a bad day at the office either. So now we take the 75 points for and divide by the 50 points against, and we get 1.5. Multiply 1.5 by 100, and you get a percentage of 150. Also, not too shabby. A percentage over 100 means you have scored more than allowed, and under 100 means you have scored less than your opponents did against you. If your percentage is exactly 100, then your points for and points against have been the same amount. Clear as mud. Now, after 23 rounds of competition, the top 8 teams then move on to the playoffs, or finals as they are called, with the club at number 1 being crowned the minor premiers. On the opposite end of things, the team in the last spot gets the label of wooden spoon hung on them. No bragging rights there. The last round matches can be very exciting as your team's destiny can actually be in the hands of other teams playing. And not just if another team wins or loses, but with the percentage tiebreaker, the score can be critical. It is not unheard of to have a team slip in and out of the finals as matches go on, and the scores go up and down, whether they are actually playing in that match or not. Now, where in the top 8 you finish on the ladder is very important at this stage when entering the playoffs. Okay, try to stay with me here, because this is quite different from what we're used to in America. In the first round of the finals, all 8 teams play, but the top 4 play in qualifying finals, and the bottom 4 teams play in elimination finals. Just as the name suggests, if you lose an elimination final, you are out of the finals, and the winner goes on to the second round of the finals, called the semifinals. However, as a reward for being one of the top 4 teams, if you lose a qualifying final, your season isn't over. You get to move on to the semifinals and play the winners of the elimination finals. But if you win the qualifying final game, you actually get to skip the semifinals altogether and move on to the third round of the playoffs called the preliminary finals. This final is basically like the conference championships in the NFL. If I confused you along the way, I apologize. It is a bit hard to visualize, and it would probably be a good idea for you to pause this podcast and just do a Google search for AFL Finals Flowchart so you could see it for yourself. Now, if you are listening to me in your car and you're currently driving, you should of course look it up later. All these finals culminate with the two teams who win their respective preliminary finals meeting each other in the AFL Grand Final, held every year on usually the last Saturday in September at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, also known as the MCG, or just simply the G. A notable exception was the 2016 Granny, which was played on October 1st. Whatever the date, it is the biggest day on Australia's sporting calendar. It is preceded by a week of festivities including the huge Grand Final parade, which leaves from Melbourne's central business district with players from both teams in open vehicles waving to adoring fans who are lining the Wellington Parade Street before ending up at the MCG. The next day, on Grand Final Day, the G is always packed with about 100,000 screaming fans, like ancient Romans at the Colosseum. So, who are these 18 clubs that battle week after week, year after year? I have to say that when I first saw a map of the AFL clubs, I was shocked to discover that more than half of the teams are located in and around Melbourne. Now sure, Geelong is down the highway a bit from the other clubs, but still 10 teams are clustered around Port Phillip Bay. Having grown up with American sports leagues, with teams generally spaced all over the continent, this seemed very strange to me. But once I learned a little bit of AFL history and Australian geography, it made much more sense. Like I said before, I will delve deeper into that at a later date. Now the rest of the teams are located outside the Australian state of Victoria, paired up nicely in their own states. There's 2 in New South Wales, 2 in Queensland, a pair in South Australia, and finally 2 more in West Australia. Now I have to admit that I was bitterly disappointed when I first discovered the AFL and learned that there was no team called the Tasmanian Devils. In fact, there's no permanent AFL team there at all currently. That may change at some point, but for now AFL footy in Tassie seems limited to a few travel games by Melbourne-based clubs. So let's now briefly explore the 18 AFL teams a little, one at a time. I'll go alphabetically, saving my personal favorite for last. We begin our field trip with the pride of South Australia, the Adelaide Crows. They are based in the city of Churches, Adelaide, in the Australian state of South Australia. Founded in 1990 as part of the AFL expansion outside of Victoria, the Crows joined the AFL for the 1991 season. They play their home games at the Adelaide Oval, and their colours are navy blue, red, and gold. They have won 2 premierships, going back-to-back in 1997 and 1998. Now we have to travel way up to the Brisbane Lions in the northernmost AFL city of Brisbane in the state of Queensland. The team was founded in 1996 by the merger of 2 football clubs, the Brisbane Bears and the Fitzroy Lions, hence their rather long official club name, Brisbane Bears Fitzroy Football Club Limited. Now you know what all those letters mean on the back of their Guernseys, just underneath the collar. They play their home games at the Brisbane Cricket Ground, which is more popularly known as the Gabba. Their colours are maroon, blue, and gold. Brisbane has won 3 premierships consecutively in 2001, 2, and 3. Next, let's head on down to Melbourne, Victoria, for one of the oldest teams in the league, the Carlton Blues. Founded in 1864, the Baggers, as they are affectionately called, were one of the 8 founding members of the league, and they play their home games at the MCG and at what is now Marvel Stadium. Their colors are navy blue and white. They have won 16 championship flags, the last one being in 1995. Okay, for our next team, we have to walk about 2 kilometers east through the neighborhood of Fitzroy and cross Smith Street to find ourselves in Collingwood. Founded in 1892, the Collingwood Magpies are one of the most popular clubs as far as the number of members, yet perhaps the team other Victorian fans love to hate the most. This was particularly true during the VFL days, but may have lessened somewhat as other states joined the competition. Interstate rivalries still run pretty strong, and Collingwood is still a Victorian club, after all. Yet being hated seems to be a badge of honor Collingwood fans wear with pride. Their colors are black and white, looking not totally unlike a referee of the NFL, and they play their home games at the MCG. The Pies have won 15 premierships in their history, the last one being in 2010. Alright, next we have to jet up to northwest Melbourne, where we find ourselves in the neighborhood of Essendon, the home of the Bombers. Founded in 1871, the Essendon Football Club usually play their home games at Marvel Stadium. Being one of the founding members of the league, the club's colors are black with a red diagonal sash. The Dons, as they are affectionately known, have won the cup 16 times, the last one being in Y2K. Okay, now we really need to fly, as our next team is located in the city of Fremantle in the Australian state of West Australia. Remember, Australia is just slightly smaller than the continental United States, and going from Melbourne to Fremantle is almost the same distance as going from New York City to Denver, Colorado. Founded in 1994, the Fremantle Dockers play their home games at Optus Stadium. Freo's current colors are purple and white, though their original Guernseys sported a large anchor on the front, sided by red and green, to represent the Maritime Navigation sidelight colors for port and starboard, respectively. Being a relatively young club, the Dockers have not yet won a premiership, though they did make it to the grand final in 2013. Okay, head back to Melbourne and drive south for about an hour along the Princess Freeway, and you will find yourself in Geelong. Founded in 1859, the Geelong Cats are the second oldest team in the league and, of course, a founding member. The colors are white and navy blue, and unlike many teams, are displayed by horizontal hoops rather than vertical stripes. The Cats play their home games at GMHBA Stadium, which is more affectionately called the Cattery. Geelong has won 9 premierships, the last one being in 2011. For our next team, we need to fly up north to Queensland again, to the Australian Riviera, as I might have heard it called somewhere, but it is much more well known as the Gold Coast. Joining the AFL as its 17th club in 2011, the Gold Coast Suns play their home games at Metricon Stadium. Their home Guernseys sport colors of red, gold, and just a bit of sky blue. Still being a young club, the Suns have not yet won a grand final. Alright, next we head a fair bit south to the state of New South Wales. The newest team in the league, the Greater Western Sydney Giants, entered the league in 2012. Calling the Western Sprawl of Sydney home, the Giants also claim the capital city of Canberra. They play their home games at Spotless Stadium, which is part of the Sydney Showground Olympic Park. Their colors are orange, charcoal, and white. The Giants lost their first and only grand final appearance in 2019. So now we head back down to Melbourne to visit the Happy Club of Hawthorn. Entering the league in 1902, their traditional colors are brown and gold, usually in bold vertical stripes. The Hawks have won 13 premierships since their first in 1961, and their last 3 were one after another from 2013 to 2015. Our next team also plays at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, and you could argue that they pretty much invented the game itself there. But more about that in another episode. Formed in 1858, the Melbourne Demons are the oldest team in the league. Their colors are navy blue and red. They have won 12 championships in their long history, the last one being in 1964. So now we head west and north across the Melbourne Central Business District, or CBD, as it is often called, to North Melbourne, where we find the Kangaroos. The Kangas, or Shinboners as they are sometimes called, were founded in 1869, and they currently play their home games at Marvel Stadium. Their colors are royal blue and white, and are almost always in broad vertical stripes. They have won 4 Premiership Cups, the last one being in 1999. Okay, let's head interstate again, back to where we started this poorly thought out journey, namely South Australia. Specifically, the city of Alberton, where the Port Adelaide Football Club calls home. Formed in 1870, the club was formerly called the Magpies when they played in the South Australian National Football League, or SANFL as the statewide competition is called, winning an incredible 36 championships. In 1997, in order to make the move to the premier National Australian Football League, the team was forced to change its name and colors since Collingwood already were called the Magpies and wore similar black and white Guernseys. Port changed their name to the Power and added a teal strip to their uniforms. The Port Adelaide Power have since won one AFL championship in 2004. Alright, bear with me, we're almost there. Just a few more to go. We head back to Melbourne and go across the lawn from the MCG to Punt Road and Tigerland, home of the Richmond Tigers. Formed in 1885, the club joined the league in 1908 and currently plays its home games at the MCG. Their colors are black with a yellow diagonal sash, not unlike the Essendon Bombers Guernsey design. As far as membership counts go, Richmond is one of the largest, if not the largest, clubs today. The Tigers have won 12 championships, most recently in 2017 and 2019. Staying in Melbourne, we're going to head down south across the brown waters of the Yarra River all the way down to the lovely beachside neighborhoods of St Kilda, the home of the Saints. Founded in 1873, St Kilda was one of the founding members of the league. Their colors are red, white, and black, and they play their home games at Marvel Stadium. The St Kilda Saints have won one premiership back in 1966. Now, while we're down in this part of town, let me ask you this. Can there be anything worse for a football supporter than losing your beloved club? I think not. Well, that is exactly what happened to the fans of the South Melbourne Football Club in 1982 when the Swans moved to Sydney, becoming the first club to be based outside the state of Victoria. Affectionately known as the Bloods, the club was founded in 1874. Their colours are red and white, and they currently play their home games at the Sydney Cricket Ground, or SCG for short. The Swans have won 5 premierships, the last one in 2012. Despite having moved to another state, the Swans still maintain a strong supporter base in Melbourne. Alright, once again we fly across the continent to West Australia, this time to the city of Perth, home of the West Coast Eagles Football Club. Founded as an expansion team in 1986, the Eagles first competed in the league the following season, winning their first championship in 1992. Their colors are royal blue and gold, and they play their home games at Optus Stadium. They have won a total of 4 championships, the last one in 2018. Finally, last but certainly not least, we arrive back at Tullamarine Airport in Melbourne. Heading down the Western Ring Road and across the E.J. Whitten Bridge, we arrive in the West Melbourne suburb of Footscray. Founded in 1877 as a Footscray Football Club, the Bulldogs joined the VFL/AFL in 1925. For the 1997 season, the club changed its name to the Western Bulldogs, which is what they are still known as today. They play their home games at Marvel Stadium. Their colors are red, white, and royal blue, these days usually arranged as a red and white horizontal hoop on a blue Guernsey. The mighty Bulldogs have won 2 premierships, the most recent one in 2016, and what a glorious day it was. Wow, what a trip. I hope you were able to stay with me on this journey of the current 18 AFL teams and that it answered some questions you may have had about the Australian Football League. We may certainly dive much deeper into the various clubs in future episodes, but I think we've done enough damage for now. I would be eternally grateful if you would be kind enough to share a link to this podcast with your friends and family, whether they are new to this awesome game of Australian rules football or not. Also, I would love to hear your comments and suggestions. You can reach me on Facebook and Twitter at Stray Dog Footy and by email at straydogfooty@yahoo.com. You can also leave me a comment on the Podbean app if that's how you are listening to my annoying voice. As always, I wanted to state that I am not endorsed by nor officially affiliated with either the Australian Football League or the Western Bulldogs beyond being a huge fan and proud supporter. Likewise, I am not endorsed by or affiliated with Peg and the Rejected, but I am a fan of their music. I would like to thank them for the use of their song Red, White, Black and Blue, which I used a portion of as the intro to this episode. I will also play us out to their entire song and, of course, leave a link in the show notes to their music. They have also just released an instrumental album, and I will be providing a link to that as well. That's about it. So take care, be safe, and keep it off the woodwork.